My mother and father then found their way to Northern Ireland somehow. I don't really know the details, quite frankly, but there was a Belfast Jewish community,
It was.
and a prominent member of that was the well-known actor Harold Goldblatt. You may have heard of him. He was in British films around about the time in the post-war years. A very famous actor. He would have been one of the ones she would have mentioned. And but then it's not hard to realise what happened. The two of them obviously were totally traumatised. My mother and father by what had happened to their families during the war. And so although they got married and they had me, and they lived in various addresses, but obviously there was no way they were going to have a happy married life. The war was on. They had lost their families, and goodness knows what was going through their heads. And what they must have been thinking about. Eventually the marriage, eventually they decided to split up and they got divorced, would you believe? And then this is where the story really begins as far as I'm concerned. At that stage I was just an infant. Where was my mother to go, having split up with my father? They must have said to her, why don't you go to the refugee farm which had been set up outside Mallyle? And so my mother and I go to the Mallyle refugee farm.
And that was about 1942 or 40?
Yes,
do you
probably
think?
something like that.
You were born in 1940.
1941. So probably 1942 is probably very accurate, really. I have a memory of being a baby in a pram, actually at the top of the lane. The address is the Woburn Corner. The Woburn Corner at Mallyle, which was well known years ago as part of the course of the Carrador 100 motorcycle race.
Oh, right.
And I'll tell you about that later though. From the Woburn Corner there's a long lane which takes you up to the farm, the refugee farm.
And the refugee farm was called Ballyrolly House?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And so my mother and I lived in a wee tiny dormitory, a wee tiny room in Ballyrolly House. They had made living accommodation for the refugees there, and we had a wee room just to ourselves. And I can remember I was the youngest, you see, by far on the farm.